So this pair's got some cork damage, but split on the toe, so we'll glue that up and grind a groove out and refill that with some cork. Got some bits like this that'll glue up okay, and on the back it's missing quite a bit of cork. Clean this out, glue it, and put cork filler in there and then reshape it. So I'm going to go ahead and add some glue in where we need it. This is basically contact adhesive, a bit like ADOS F2. While that's drying, we'll go ahead and put a coat of glue onto the sole. So we'll get a good scoop of glue here and coat it all the way out to the edges. Only really needs 5 minutes to dry this one. We'll put that in to dry, and now we'll start putting this together. We'll jump back on the grinder. So now we've got some grooves there. Just going to put another coat of glue into that. That'll give us a nice crisp edge once we've got the filler in there. It's worth mucking about getting the filler right, otherwise when you're trying to trim it up later on, the filler will get stuck on the belt, come out. Right, we'll let that dry, then we'll heat up some filler and pop it in. So here's a bit of that cork filler. It's quite hot and sticky. I'm just going to run that along into that groove. You've got to handle it kind of carefully and quickly because it's so sticky and burny. Get that in there. That little bit's a bit too cool, so we'll hit it with the heat gun. So now that it's a bit warmer, just a matter of squidgying that in there. It's pretty easy to overfill it, as you can see, but it's hard to get it to run along around where you want it, so you just got to keep squidgying it. And then that's my oven off to the side. Still got a bit of a groove there that needs a bit more into it, so I'm just going to get this, try and tease it out into a bit of a longer, skinnier bit without getting it stuck to myself, and then run it into that little groove there. Just going to add a bit more heat. And the sole removal tool does a real good job pushing it into that groove real well, so we don't want to sand through to an air bubble. It's one of those slightly fiddly little jobs, and it's usually too hot or too cold. Right, so we'll let that cool off and then we'll grind it back to the right shape, and we'll do this bit in the front as well. There's a little bit of cork, I just heated up with the heat gun. Ooh, she's a warm one. And just get that started in there. That's going pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, you can see we could do better with this. We do run it through a glue gun as well, but it takes forever to heat up. And then once it's hot, ooh, this is seriously warm. Ah, wow. I guess I could try gloves, but I reckon it will get stuck to the gloves all the time. And so this whole time when you're doing this sort of stuff, you're trying to keep that nice shape in the front there. That's tricky, and you also want to get it looking nice. Right, we can jump into grinding that back bit off. Now that we've got the cork sorted out, we'll pop a coat of glue onto the sandal. We don't get this beige colour in New Zealand, so we've asked the customer which colour they prefer. They've opted for the dark brown, and that's why I went around a bit closer into all these little nooks and crannies and got all of the beige off. Otherwise we would have left a thin layer between those straps, so it just makes for a nice neat finish that way. But it looks silly with little bits of this beige colour poking through with the dark brown. In New Zealand we get black, dark brown and white, which is pretty good, but it'd be nice to have some other options, eh? And the supply can be a little bit intermittent in New Zealand. Just got to make sure it gets right in next to these straps, because you're asking quite a lot of the glue to bend that Birkenstock soling down into the little dip between each strap. That's why we normally leave a piece across, and we normally leave a little bit in front of those straps too. But anyway, that is going to go onto our little cradles here, and you'll notice when that goes on there, try that one, see a little red light comes on, and in 5 minutes when the glue's set, the green light comes on. It's easy to lose track of time when you're serving lots of customers and doing multiple shoes, so it's just easier with that. We'll let that dry and we'll get back into it. Now we're going to go ahead and assemble the shoe, get the sole out. It's important to not let it touch until it's lined up, because this glue grips like goes to a Nike bag. Push that down in the middle, and then we'll just go around. We do have a sole press for these sort of things, but the cork's quite delicate, especially on ones like this with cork damage, so I much prefer just to go around, glue it up by hand. You can pop it onto the shoe last, taking care of where the heel cup is, and then give it a bit of a beating. Give it a bit of a beating with the hammer. Once again with the front, you just got to really keep an eye on where that toe is, because you don't want to go and break it. And just go right around, just checking there's no gaps. There's not much point in going and cutting it off if it's not fitting or glued on properly. Right, that looks pretty good. Now we'll go ahead and cut that off with a knife. We call this trimming with a knife. And the idea is just so we don't have to be on the noisy grinding machine for so long. It'd be nice to be able to trim it so accurately with a knife that you could leave it at that stage. That's not reality just yet. Just gotta watch out for those straps, and you also got to make sure you keep this hand up enough so you don't undercut and cut too much of the soling off. You don't want to run into those leather straps either, because then you'll have to fix those. Cut around the toe here, go pretty close to it. But it is so annoying if you take too much off. You don't feel good about your day then. Go in the bin. Now we'll go ahead and trim around it on the machine. Now that we've done all the hard work of resoling them, they still look like an old pair of Birkenstocks, so we're going to tidy up the uppers a little bit. Generally removing the straps from the buckles is a good place to start. Buckles often leave quite a few marks on here. A piece of crepe or an eraser will get rid of a lot of those marks real quick. Some of these other marks you'd be surprised to find that they just rub off, and others don't, of course. These feel like a bit of beeswax on them or something. So try and get any loose bits off first. It's kind of an oiled leather. Feels like it's been oiled anyway. Maybe that's all sorts of dressings that things come in. So those are as clean as those are going to get. That mark there may come off. And so we're going to take a look at this footbed, which is looking pretty gnarly. Bit of a split there that's not very nice. Got some 380 grit sandpaper here. This is not a suede footbed, so we can't just go gangbusters in there. So let's see if I can't take that ridge off from there. The lady's only paying for a resole, but it's nice to give them a bit of a tidy up. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the entire footbed, and then we'll put some leather primer onto it, and then we'll put a coat of colour similar to this and see how they come up. We might have to give it a Another light sand in between. There's a lot of colour coming off, it's quite loose. Heel cup gets a real hard time, as you can see. Yeah, sandpaper's just clogging up something chronic. I don't want to use water or anything because I want to get this video done in the next couple of hours or so. Yes, it does take that long or more. It takes ages. So I've sanded this with the 380 grit sandpaper, blown the dust off it, and then given it a coat of a cunning little primer I've come up with. Looks kind of smooth and nice now, but it's really ready for some paint. I've mixed up this colour using the PRG Easy Dyes, and the trick is to use as little as possible. That's a screw that's in there. I chuck a screw in there usually to make the mixing easier. Some of them come with a ball bearing, but it's a bit hopeless. So when you're mixing colours, you want to be able to get it really thoroughly mixed. That's just a little bit of paint that came out of the lid, and I reckon touch up these real bad bits first. That crack I might have to put some filler in, but not sure if I'm that keen on doing that. You can see it's done most of my painting off that tiny bit of paint. Just pop a little bit more on. So the amounts of paint we're talking about here is like 1, 2, yeah, that was a little pour, wasn't it? You get the gist. You don't need much. You want it as thin as possible and rub it round as if you're trying to rub it into the surface, because otherwise you get stripes or little bits of webbing where it webs over the grooves. Didn't do such a good job in the back there. Let's try to go for 1 drop this time. 1, there you go, plus a wipe. And you'll see that'll have quite a good effect in here. Over lemon, get those bits in here. So we'll let that dry and then we'll come back. If it feels rough, we'll give it a sand with some 600 or 1200. If it feels alright, we'll just carry on. There's a couple of bits there that aren't looking too good, and I'll try and get some filler into that split. Now we've got that footbed looking nice, we're going to go ahead, just pop a little bit of polish onto these straps. You can see where I went past with the sandpaper here, so I'm just going to get a little brush and just run a bit of polish right into that area, just to tidy that up. It's starting to look the part. Now we'll get the Kelly's Cork Renew out. Don't know if that needs a shake or not, but it's just got one. And it's, I don't know, it's just like the world's most annoying applicator, but it's better than the others. And see all this, that wants to drip onto your newly repaired thing. So try and hold it in such a way that it can drip onto the bench if it's going to. And you just got to get some on there any way you can. This is not the most accurate brush in the world. You can sort of squash that brush down flat and see if you can't get it to go up in there. It never goes quite in there as far as I want it to. And I prefer to go onto the sole a bit with it, so it's really sealing up that join there. So we'll go all the way around here. If you're having trouble getting it looking nice, grab yourself a piece of sponge, any old sponge you've got at home, and get a whole bunch of that on there. That way, it actually looks a lot nicer with it done this way, but you don't get as much on, so you sometimes be better off putting 2 coats of it on, putting 2 coats on if you're going to be using the sponge. And if you don't wear your Birks a lot, sort of out and about in the shrubbery and the seafront, you don't have to put much on anyway. But some of us that go boating all the time and walking in the mud flats, chasing flounders and things, not what Birkenstocks are built for. Generally wear my Crocs for that sort of thing. So you just get heaps on, there's the way to go. If you can hear some funny sounds in the background, that's the One Love concert or one of those sort of things going on here in Tauranga. It's a Sunday, everything's shut around here, which is great. Do a video. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and go the whole way around there. So that's pretty much the cork renew all on. So the cork looks pretty good. Little brush is quite helpful for getting into the little bits. And if you get it onto the strap, just a bit of a damp cloth or a damp sponge, it'll just wipe it off. These bits on the sole, they look pretty terrible. You can either rub them off now, rub them off later, leave them alone, or sand them off. This is a piece of crepe, just like an eraser you probably got at home. You could just rub it off with that. And your 120 grit sandpaper, if you wanted to get rid of that little piece there, it'll still it just makes them look nice. Once it's dry though, those bits will be clear, so it's basically pointless. And the thicker the coats, the longer it's going to take to dry. So we're going to leave this to dry for half an hour or so, and then we'll get into the other one. Here they are after we've finished the one, so you can see the comparison. They certainly look nicer. We've gone with the dark brown soling because we don't get the beige in New Zealand. It's still the original Birkenstock soling. Coloured up those uppers, polished the straps, given it a coat of cork renew on the cork, and where the cork was broken, like this has got the broken cork, we've glued it down and then filled any missing cork. Yep, so hopefully the lady can carry on creating fun memories and tramping around in the Birks. If you'd like us to take a look at your Birks, you can go to shanes.co.nz. There's a free quote page. Send a photo of yours and we'll get back to you with ideas.